This is the book The Story of ABBA Melancholy Undercover by Swedish journalist Jan Gradvall. In today's video I will give you some insights, my overall impressions and review of the book. Hey! So, The Story of ABBA Melancholy Undercover was written by Jan Gradvall and was released earlier this year in the United States by St. Martin's Press. The book itself opens with a quote from ABBA's reunion song I Still Have Faith in You. We have a story and it survived. From the start, this book brings us right to the present day. And that's something I really enjoyed and appreciated. This book is very up to date, documenting the Voyage reunion period, the creation of ABBA's concert experience, even up to Agnieszka's latest solo project, A+, and also including, for example, recent passings of musicians related to ABBA. What is probably most important to note is that this book is not a chronological rundown of the story of ABBA. Jan Gradvall has a completely different approach of writing ABBA's story. This is more like different snapshots, feelings and context. The author himself wrote that he realized the story of a band need not be told in a linear way, and that it's perfectly fine to skip the linking passages included in a traditional biography and just focus on what you find most interesting. And that also makes it in a strange way compelling and exciting when you read this book. What comes next? What will be the next slice in ABBA's story and rich history? The next context embedded. The book actually starts at the end of ABBA's story, at the end of their first 10 years, with a chapter called The Day Before You Came, ABBA's final song for 35 years. Let me read to you the first paragraph. Benny Andersson is lying on the floor at Polar Studios, listening to all that remains of ABBA. His eyes are closed. Everyone else has left. The song that he has just finished recording and which he is now listening to on his headphones is the chilling and portentous The Day Before You Came, a synthesizer ballad that is almost 6 minutes long. For 39 years, everyone assumed that this would be ABBA's last recording. The chapter later reads, when The Day Before You Came was recorded, it was as if the divorce of the entire band had been set to music. The first chapter is about the craft of ABBA, the input of the individual members, and about ABBA's own recording studio, Polar Studios. It gives us the exact location of the studio over the waterways of Karlbergskanalen, which then gets important for the context of the song. The Day Before You Came was recorded in summertime, but feels like winter. The fragile, frosty sound reminds the author of that canal below the Polar Studios in wintertime, frozen and lonely. The chapter also gives context of birds to the studio. The song's working title was The Suffering Bird. A few paragraphs earlier, Gradvall had already established the importance of birds for Benny and his music, and the very final chapter of the book is like a bookend, returning to the importance of birds, of nature and melancholia. Jan Gradvall has this ability to describe very beautifully and delicately sceneries, feelings and an atmosphere. This book is his result of years of joining the members of ABBA individually in interviews, putting together his take on ABBA. But it's not only his research and writing on ABBA, but other subjects as well. Music history, political history, society, languages, geography, all embedded into the quest of where does ABBA fall into it all? How do their roots fit in and their work? And what is it that ABBA is leaving? The book even brings in existential perspectives about the nature of human being. It's all mixed with ABBA's story. It gives you different perspectives, a variety of context which sometimes strays away from ABBA, but comes back again. There is an entire chapter about Rutger Gunnarsson, individual chapters about all 4 members of ABBA. Some of the content of this book became a blueprint for some of my recent videos. ABBA Beyond Borders, Frida's early years, her childhood and influences. There is a wonderful chapter about the creation and secret of the ABBA Voyage concert, and an entire chapter about Björn and Benny's big birthday party at Berns for the 50th anniversary of their friendship. It's a very detailed description and a very emotional reading, culminating when it says, "The 4 ABBAs are all on stage now." It gives us glimpses into that evening, and at the end of that evening, which I never read anywhere else before. One of my favorite chapters, to my surprise, was the one about Björn. If you haven't already, you will fall in love with Björn. This is very personal, very fresh and sensitive, insightful, about memories, about missing memories, about fateful meetings, all the way to questions about destiny, existential questions on life. Why are we here? Where do we end up once we're dead? This chapter is about loneliness, about tragic and death. It ends with a quote from Björn, quoting a poem. There is something beyond the mountains, beyond the flowers and the singing. This book reminded me why I fell in love with ABBA all those years ago. It has this very unique approach to it, somewhat mysterious, and it sets you in the mood to explore ABBA, their music, the story, to explore Frida and Benny and Björn and Agneta individually and collectively, all over again. Thank you so much to Jan Gradvall, to the book's publisher St. Martin's Press and the wonderful people working there. This is the story of ABBA, Melancholy Undercover. And now I would like to know from you, what do you think of the book, The Story of ABBA, Melancholy Undercover? What's your impression, your favorite chapters? Please let me know in the comments below. Alright, until then, hey do!